So I'm back in the kitchen. It's fall. It's the middle of November. And of all the recipes that I've done or all the videos I've uploaded for this channel, I haven't made anything Japanese. My youngest daughter, Cordelia, loves Japanese food. She likes Japanese culture and everything else along those lines as well, too. For me, growing up in the Northwest, the food, the culture, and everything along the Pacific Rim is something that I am very used to growing up outside of Seattle. So in this case, I decided I'll make something that is Asian influence that does come from Japan, but it's something probably most Americans would know that is a part of Japanese cuisine. It's called Nikujaga. It's a potato and beef and vegetable stew. In this case, I'm not going to follow the recipe exactly as it's traditionally done because I've got ground elk here. This came a part of my weekly produce box or grocery delivery. I got ground lamb and I got ground elk as a part of this. The other thing that I'm not going to do that would traditionally be found in this recipe as well too is I don't have yellow onions or white onions that are traditionally found in this recipe, but I do have a leek. It's left over from when I made the shepherd's pie. So I'm going to use that instead. I've got garlic, I've got spring onions, I've got other things as well too, which I'll add to this. But this is a fairly simple recipe with basically your potatoes, onions, carrots, and then your meat. It's a quick and easy stew to make as well too. I think this doesn't take any more than an hour to make at the most. I'm doubling this recipe because the original calls for only a half a pound of meat. I have a full pound. I also like to make a meal that lasts me an entire week and not just a couple of days. So that's the reason why I'm doubling this recipe as well too. So let's get started. I'm going to preheat my Dutch oven here. I do have an enamel Dutch oven that I could use as well too, but I'm going to use this one instead this time around. What I'm going to do with this inside of the Dutch oven is it says medium high heat. You're going to add some oil and I'm going to saute all the vegetables up. I'm going to do the carrots, potatoes, and the onions together. It asks you to do a cartouche over the top of it. I don't typically do that at all. You can cut out the parchment paper to do the cartouche over the vegetables as they're cooking, but it's the author of the cookbook itself is French trained. So she goes a little bit over the top in a lot of the recipes that she makes. I'm not going to do that. I will skim the fat off of the beef as the beef is simmering in the stock. That's the most I will do. So it'll come out as looking more like a consommé instead of a beef stew in that respect. But other than that, I don't go over the top of my cooking in that respect. It's just who I am. So as that is warming up, I will grab my sesame oil because it does call for a little bit of sesame oil. You put it in the bottom of the Dutch oven and you use that as your base to help saute the vegetables. The Dutch oven it's warm enough. You put your hand over it, you can definitely feel the heat coming out of it. So what I'm going to do right now is add a tablespoon of sesame oil to it, and then I'm just going to add the vegetables to it and saute them all up. You're only going to do this for about 2 to 3 minutes. You're not doing it to soften them really, but just to get them covered in the oil and to start the cooking process out. So with that being said, here are the potatoes. Add the onions. And the carrots. Now, in the recipe, it calls for 1.5 pounds of potatoes. I did 3 pounds of potatoes. It's a medium carrot. I did 2 medium carrots. The onions are 2 cups of onions, give or take. Now, I should probably have 4 cups of onions to this, but I don't have enough onions for that. But I do have garlic and spring onions I'm going to add to it as well, too. So it kind of makes up for it as well. So that's your base. Now, let's get this all stirred up. I'll set a timer here for 3 minutes. And we'll get this kind of all covered up in oil. Now, I probably will add another tablespoon of oil to this because it barely covered the bottom of the Dutch oven. And due to the volume of the vegetables I have as well too, I'll add a little bit more oil to it. So let these sit, cook, saute a little bit. Put some color, especially in the carrots. You'll see them getting a little bit charred in the bottom of the Dutch oven because it's over medium-high heat. And I'm not, as I say, I'm not using my enamel Dutch oven because you really shouldn't cook in an enamel Dutch oven over this kind of heat. It'll cause the enamel to crack. So we got this all nicely done out. Let me continue to cook this, and then I'll show you when I add the broth and meat to it, which is the next step. So the vegetables have been cooking now for 3 minutes. I do have to add a cup and a half of water to this. And in this case, what I added to the water was 1 packet, or you can do a bouillon cube of beef stock. So you can get a little bit of an extra base. Actually going to add, because I'm doubling it, another 1.5 cups, but I'm not going to add any more broth to it. I've got the base I want. So in this case, because I'm doubling it, we're doing 3 cups of water instead of a cup and a half. You don't have to add the broth to it. I just do it because it adds a little bit more flavor to it. There's going to be plenty of salt in this, especially after I add the soy sauce and the mirin. And the temperature will drop quite a bit because you're adding water to this. So we're going to let that come up to a boil, and then I'm going to add the ground beef. I'm going to bring it back up to a simmer, cover it, and then I'll add, after it comes to a simmer and I let it cook for a little bit longer, then I'll add the mirin, the soy sauce, and everything else to it. So let me bring it back up to a boil, and I'll show you what goes on next. So the beef stock and the vegetables are up to a boil. And yes, this isn't cooked. And you do add the raw beef to this. What you're going to do is basically, or in this case, this is the raw elk. In this case, you're going to cook this in with the stock. You're going to add your soy sauce, sugar, mirin to this as well too. And you're just basically going to cook the beef in with the stock and the vegetables for a period of time. I do believe this says 2 to 3 minutes. And then I did, in this case, while I was waiting for this to come to a boil, did create a cartouche. You do cover the meat and the vegetables for about 15 minutes, and you let it cook and you let it simmer for that period of time. Remove the cartouche and you can serve it. You don't have to completely cover it. Most of the times when I make this dish, I just add the lid to either a Dutch oven and just let it cook that way. As this is boiling as well too, the recipe also instructs you as the chef to basically skim off the fat that you see coming off of the meat in this case. This is fairly lean meat in this case because it's elk. If I use lamb may be a little bit more fattier. In fact, I know lamb is fattier. So you could skim off on that. So it's your discretion how you want to look. You're skimming the impurities off basically just for presentation and not for flavor or anything else. So you will have what comes out to be more, as I say, it looks like a clear consomme and not like a thick stew in that respect. So let's get this back up to a boil. We'll let it simmer. The beef is starting to cook, which is what you want it to do in this case. Once I bring it up back to a boil, I'll drop the temperature down and put it to a simmer. I'll let it simmer for 15 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now, while this is coming back up to a boil, let's do this. I do need to add the soy sauce, the sake, and the mirin. So let's start off with this. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar. You can use regular table sugar, or in this case, I'm using monk fruit sweetener because I do have to get rid of it. It's fructose. It's sweet enough. It doesn't affect the cooking of it in any ways. So we'll do 4 tablespoons of this.
Another first wave.
Then I'm going to add a half a cup of soy sauce. And let's see here, 4 tablespoons of cooking sake and a tablespoon of mirin. Let me grab my cooking sake because I didn't grab it originally. And this is my nice, authentic Japanese cooking sake. So I need 4 tablespoons. Sometimes if I don't have any cooking sake, I use sochu as well too. I do have a quantity of sake in my bar as well too, but why use premium alcohol when you can use cooking alcohol that's a lot cheaper as well too? Now, you can notice my mirin is very dark. It looks almost like soy sauce, but it is not soy sauce. So, it's up to a boil after I've added everything to this, which is what I wanted. Let me give this a stir, give it a little bit of a taste. And I may add a pinch of MSG. Now I do this for Josiah because Josiah loves the flavor enhancement of MSG. I know the MSG gets a bad name in the US, but in all honesty, MSG is one of those flavor enhancers that, for me, cooking Asian food in general, or any dish that calls for a good umami flavor, I think MSG does a perfect job for that. I know it gets a bad rap in the US because everybody is under the impression in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s that MSG is harmful for you. It's really not. It's just another form of salt. You may get a headache from it, but it's not going to cause cancer or anything else along those lines. That's been debunked for years. So, in tasting this, you'd think that from all the sugar I added to it, it would be quite sweet, but it's not. It has a salty flavor to it, but it's not overly salty because I didn't add that much soy sauce to it. But you can definitely taste the beef. You can taste the other stuff that's inside of it as well too. So it's got a nice, rich flavor to it, like a beef stew, which you would expect. Now, as you can probably see from within the video itself, there's not really a lot that I need to skim from off of the top because the elk is fairly lean. So, but when you look at this, it's not going to be a clear style beef consomme as the original author intended. And I think that may be just due to the fact that I'm using elk, not beef. It could be other factors as well too. But I've never really concerned myself over the presentation as a whole. So it's up to a boil. I'm going to drop the temperature down to a medium low, and then I'm going to add the cartouche onto the top of it. And I'm just going to let this cook until the potatoes are tender. It says about 15 minutes. So let's get this onto here. And there we go. So let this cook for 15 minutes. Remove the cartouche. Cook it for another 15 minutes to kind of let it sit and thicken up. A lot of the starch is going to cook off of the potatoes, which will give it that stew-like consistency and texture as well too. So I'll be back in a little bit. It has been 15 minutes since I put the cartouche on, and this has been sitting and simmering. You can actually see, if you look underneath this, there is a nice layer underneath this. Now, I will skim off the top on this because this does look like it can be skimmed. And the soup, or the stew in general, has cleared up quite a bit. So it does have that consomme brightness to it. So, one thing to know. But as I say, I'm not that picky about it. So what I need to do now is basically, let me taste this first and see. Oh yeah, that's really good. Not overly salty. Just a hint of sweetness to it. Could add a little bit more salt, but I won't at this point. So what I need to do now is let it simmer until all the ingredients are tender and the liquid is reduced a bit, about 15 minutes. The stew consistency should be between a braised dish and a stew itself, according to the author's notes. So we will do that. We will just let this cook and simmer for another 15 minutes. I will give it a good stir. And the clearness of the soup has gone away since I mixed everything up, but not a big deal for me. I will check with a fork to make sure that the potatoes are cooking correctly and that they are soft. In all honesty, I don't see it being a big deal if the potatoes are a little bit too hard, but that's up to you. This is all personal preference at this point. So some of these potatoes I have actually pierce really well. I keep them at about 2 inches or so. And because these are Yukon Golds, I didn't peel them at all. I left the skins on. And some of these were creamer sized, so they're about 1 inch in diameter. I didn't even bother cutting them at all. I left them intact. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're doing this. The recipe does intentionally say cut 2-inch cubes out of these, peel them, so on and so forth, and to use Yukon Golds. So you can use your own discretion like I do at this point. So there you go. I'll be back in about 15 minutes. The final 15 minutes has been completed, and I'm going to have a little bit of this for lunch. Now, if you've never cooked with elk before, you may be put off by a little bit of the gaminess of the flavor. It's a little bit stronger than beef in some cases, but it's not awful. I like this, and that's just personal preference. The original recipe actually calls for thinly sliced beef in the traditional Japanese sense, but the recipe has been adapted to an American kitchen, so they use ground beef. You can use any kind of ground beef meat, in all honesty. Turkey, chicken, in this case, I used elk. You can even try lamb as well too. But the base or the actual overall flavor of this is you got that salty sweet and then the flavor of the vegetables as well too. Using leeks in this also changes the flavor profile compared to using yellow onions as it originally calls for. And adding leeks to this does not alter it in a way that changes it completely, but it's a little bit more of a milder, sweeter flavor as well too. So if you want to make this, experiment. Try and see what you feel works well. Honestly, in the future, I may try using more leeks in this instead of using yellow onions. But as I say, it's completely up to you. But you can see the consistency of this. It's slightly cloudy because I didn't skim it, but it's salty, it's sweet, it's robust. It's not hearty and heavy as a traditional beef stew, but it does taste quite well. So, bon appetit.